Welcome to Chasing the Upside, conversations about living the FPL life. Jacksie and Knowlzy, the draft duo, no less. Welcome to Chasing the Upside. How are you?
I'm great, Ben. Thanks for having us. I'm going to look forward to this chat. It's literally what we love doing, talking about FPL. So thanks for having us, Bud.
Yeah, we've been doing the podcast a little while, and when you sent the message in to ask would you like us to be on your podcast, the two of us were like, yes, 100%. We'd love to.
Finally,
love
someone
podcast.
that listen to us.
Well, it is nice being on the other side because, you can kind of just sit back and relax and let the questions come to you, aren't they? So, we're gonna have a good chat. So, I'm going to start where we always start in these conversations is your FPL origin story. So, where does it all start for you both?
I think my origin story starts a bit sooner than Jacksie's. So I think, like everyone, you're kind of interested in FPL. Even as a young fella, I'd be interested in football massively. And you make a FPL team, and after 3 or 4 weeks, you never change it. And once you don't change it, it's gone. And I think me and Jacksie had that conversation with a lot of people. And we're like, oh, you playing this year? And they're like, no, after a couple of weeks, I forget about it. And that's it. And that's the biggest thing that stops people. But about 5 years ago, there's this league called the Christy Nicholson League. It's literally our town, and it's like a load of people from any age, 18 to 50, 60, that joined this group. And since all my friends started getting involved, I started getting involved. And then that's when I started being like, okay, I can't miss a deadline. And when then you kind of get hooked on doing well and improving and whatever. And that went on. Really liked the game. But then COVID happened. And I was living up in Dublin. We're from Ireland, as you probably could guess. And one of my mates was like, oh, you're playing FPL this year? I was like, yeah. He's like, oh, you should join our draft. And I was like, what the hell is a draft, man? And he's like, explain it to me. I was like, that sounds unbelievable. So I started the draft, and it took over my whole life. And my girlfriend couldn't stand me anymore because that's all I talked about. And I just was fascinated. We'll get into exactly what makes the draft unique and why we love it and why we kind of chose to go down that route. But once I hit the draft, I was like, FPL is now my life. And as you said, kind of before we start recording, you start following a couple of people on Twitter, you start looking at a bit of YouTube. And my favorite quote that I always say is, the more you know you don't know. And I didn't know anything about this Twitter sphere or the YouTube kind of arena for FPL. And it was just mind blowing. I was like, oh my God, this is like a whole world, a whole community of people that play this game that from the outside seems insignificant. You know, when I describe it to someone, and I'll let you, Jacksie, talk in a sec, sorry. When I describe it to someone, they're like, so are the players real? I'm like, they're real in real life, but we pick them in a game, and you describe the concept to them, and they're like, whatever you think, whatever keeps you happy. So yeah, once the draft took over my life, I met Jacksie when did we meet Jacksie? 2020, summer of COVID.
2020. Yeah. So I suppose my FPL journey kind of starts when I met Knowlzy. I would have been one of those casual players, like maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. I'd make my team, forget about it, or else I just wouldn't play a year. Like, I'm a big Tottenham Hotspur fan, so I'd be just watching the Spurs games, and I wouldn't really immerse myself in the Premier League. And then, me and Knowlzy were living together in Galway. So it was over COVID. There wasn't much to do. There was football on. And he started telling me about the draft. And he said he's in a group with these 10 other guys from Dublin that he knew very well. And I didn't know who any of them were at all. But playing each week, there was a group chat there. And I actually got to know the lads in the chat very well, just by trading with each other, having waivers. And we were just having great crack. I was like, fun I never had playing normal fantasy football because everyone had the same team. But there was just more conversations going on about trades, about waivers, and we we're all conversing together. And I think it was the community that the draft built. That's what made it a bit more exciting, made it more interesting. And yeah, like Knowlzy said, he won his first draft. It was only last year I really committed to the draft, and I won two drafts out of 3 that I played. So I was like, geez, I'm actually I'm not too bad at this. Because of my rank. If you look at my rank in normal fantasy football, I'd say I was in the millions. And then I played the draft and I was beating lads that would be regarded as very good fantasy football players. So I was like, I must be okay at this. And then because I was researching players every week, I know I have a degree in college and it was like data analytics and there's a lot of research aspects to that. And I was like, I can bring my interest in that into fantasy football. And I'd be researching players every week. And yeah, the love for football combined with maybe my college and my university research, it kind of combined into one, and it was fantasy football.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about the draft a bit, but all the same concepts apply. Normal draft or normal FPL and draft in terms of what you're talking about, in terms of the highs and lows. And I think that's what the game is about. You know, at the end of the day, yes, it's great to have a nice rank, and yeah, I'd love to win my mini league, but we just wait till game week 38 and just see, okay, what did I get? Oh, I just want to get 100k, and you've had 38 game weeks of researching, as you said, highs and lows, moments you won't ever forget. And I know it sounds ridiculous when we're talking about a fantasy game, but moments I'll still remember exactly where I am or where I was when particular things happened. And we're always rushing. Okay, my rank is this now. Let's get into the next game week and get my rank up. Or if I had a red arrow, I want to get a green arrow. And we don't enjoy the ride. And I think that's the most important thing. I think that we can get so caught up, especially on Twitter. Like, I had a red arrow this week. I had no Salah, and I could really get down about it. And like, if I go on Twitter and I scroll through my Twitter feed, it's only the people that got the green arrow posting, and I could just like scroll. I literally did it today for 10 minutes until I found a post that wasn't like about Salah or whatever. Someone said I had a shit game week. I'm like, fantastic, some honesty. And I think everyone wants to do that, especially on Twitter. Like, they don't want to talk about when they have a bad week, and they only want to, you know, they have some particular person captain, boom, they'll post, and that's when they get the joy. But we talked about it on our last podcast, and I think it's because we were coming on here, that you can get very high and very low during FPL, and it can dictate your mood. And for me, it has dictated my mood in the past. I'm not going to say I went round in a real bad mood because I didn't do well, but I definitely was in a better mood when I did well. You know, I remember we were out 2 weeks ago and we had just finished the season for football over in Perth and having a good time. And then I checked the scores and Saka or whoever scores, and I was like, now I'm having a great time. And like, I remember that'll stick in my head. I finished the season with Emerald FC, the team we're playing with, and I had a savage week in fantasy and I won the draft. Like, that would be part of my weekend. So I try and actually grasp the highs more than, and this has only happened in the last couple of years, and me kind of figuring out I can't get too down about it. That if I had a bad weekend, that doesn't mean that night out was terrible. So I think managing them highs and lows is the most important part about actually doing well at the game. Not just enjoying it and going for the ride, but I think doing well.
Knowlzy, just on the point there about the highs and the lows of it, and you said, you're waiting until game week 38 just to see your rank. And like, you're missing out on a whole season of enjoyment. You're missing out on 38 game weeks of enjoyment. And that's what we feel we can bring to the draft, is you're excited for every single game week and every result. So let's say for this week, for example, I brought in Cole Palmer and I had Souček. So in normal, everyone was talking about Salah or that they captain Salah. But me, I was the only person in my league that could have Cole Palmer and that could have Souček. And I'll remember that. And it helps you to be present with the game week, because you can get frustrated. There could be so much other things going on. But having the draft allows you to be present and just to enjoy what's going on week to week. But yeah, if Cole Palmer didn't return and if Souček didn't return, I might be a bit frustrated as well. But because he did well, I was allowed to be present and allowed to enjoy the ride for
the
1 week.
headset might have been in 2 pieces if he didn't score.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You probably wouldn't have turned up for this chat if Palmer skied the penalty.
Yeah.
But so I think it's a good time to talk a bit about the game, the draft game. I do. I've just started like this season doing NFL fantasy, which is very similar setup, I think, to FPL Draft. And I think anybody watching and listening to this, a really good resource is your first episode, your first ever episode where you break everything down. I think so. So yeah, anybody listening to this that has an interest with draft, absolutely go to that. And obviously everything will be in the show notes, because I think that's a really good summing up. But for the people that literally know nothing about draft, about this side of FPL, can you, in a couple of minutes, I know that's really difficult to do, but just like a couple of minutes, give the headlines essentially of what it is, and then obviously we'll just go from there.
Take it away, Jacksie. I've been rambling on there. I'll come in if I feel you miss anything.
Perfect. So the draft, yeah, very similar to the American football draft. So it's the Premier League. So the English Premier League. What we normally do is there might be 12 people in your league, 12 man, 12 woman league, whatever it is. And the beauty about the draft is nobody within that 12-person league can have the same player. And how this happens is it's what's called the draft night. Probably the most exciting part of the draft, besides the mid-game week, is the lead up to this draft night. Happens once or maybe twice a year, depending on how many times you draft. And it runs in a snake-like fashion. So let's say if the three of us were in a 3-person draft together, randomized, I might get first pick, Knowlzy gets second, and then Ben, you get third pick. But Ben, you get third pick, and you'd also get fourth pick, and it would come back around like that. So that means that nobody within the 12-man league can have the same player. Anyone that isn't picked then is what's called the waiver. So you can waiver in a player each week. You can waiver in, waiver out a player. After that's done, there's on the free agency. So any player that's not wavered is on what's called the free agent, and they can be brought in. The beauty about the waiver is if I'm coming top, I get bottom pick in the waiver. If I'm coming last, I can get first preference in the waiver. In between that, you can do trades. So I can trade Saka for Rashford. An example, this year I traded Bowen for Rashford this year. That hasn't paid dividends for me yet, but these are things that you can do within the draft. And what we do then each game week is it's a head-to-head league. So I might be playing Knowlzy one week, and then Ben, I'll be playing you the next week. And then we do it on total and head-to-head points. So a win gets you 3 points, draw gets you 1 point, a loss gets you 0. And then at the end, we do 19 game weeks. We split it in two seasons. We find it keeps you a bit more interested because there's a shorter term goal. People might get disinterested if it's 38. It does give you time to get back if you are a little bit behind, but we find 12-man 18, 19 game weeks is like the sweet point for an enjoyable draft. That's
I couldn't have
high
put it better
level
myself, Jacksie.
high level
I think
overview, Knowlzy. I don't know.
if you take the amount of players that you would consider having in normal FPL, this season there's a lot more actually. At the start of the season, there's probably not more than 30. You know, there's probably maybe 3-4 goalkeepers that are relevant. Maybe there's like 8 defenders at the minute. There's a lot of midfielders. There's about 10, 12, 14 midfielders, and there's about 3 strikers. So that's about 30, 40 players, if even. And in the draft, I'd say I've owned about 50 or 60 players. Now, I'm a ridiculous waiver. I just do like 7, 8 new players every week. It was an exaggeration. But I could put down 30. I've often put down near 30 waivers, 30 players that I could get in, not in the same position. But it just opens up a whole new realm of FPL, and not just FPL, of interest in football. Like, I watched the Nottingham Forest game this week just to watch Serge Aurier and to see how many points he got. And because Serge Aurier got whipped at 46 minutes at halftime, I lost my game week I drew it by a point. So like, I could be looking at, and this has happened before, Jordan Ayew yellow card, and I've been solely watching Jordan Ayew on the screen, and like he'd make a challenge, and I'm like, ref, yellow card. And like my girlfriend or whoever watching would be like, "What the hell?" Like that was nowhere near the goal, and you don't support Palace, and they're playing Norwich. I'm like, "Yeah, but if he gets a yellow card, I'm going to win." And then he gets a yellow card, and I'm celebrating like he's just banged the winner in the Champions League final. So Jacksie's given the background is exactly what happens, and then I just tried to give the kind of why we love it and everything that goes with the draft and why the draft is great and all the reasons that we love it for them tiny little moments, yellow cards. Did they make it to 60 minutes? In normal FPL, you're looking for hauls, you're looking for hat tricks, you're looking for big things every week.
Yeah, and I suppose that's everything that's happened every week. And just to touch on, like, what is the draft as well, is it's the community that's around it. So it's me meeting all Steve's friends, didn't even meet them, but chatting and making friends through the draft. Like, I'm in a league this year with my brother's in it, who lives in Greece. I have a mate who from college who lives in Toronto, and then there's a few in Ireland, and then I have another mate in Melbourne. So there's 12 of us all over the world who I'm good mates with. And if it wasn't for the draft, we probably wouldn't be in as much contact with each other. Like, we're speaking every week, just maintaining the connection with each other because the draft. We've one thing, well, we've a few things in common, but the one thing in common with all 12 is fantasy football and trying to get the edge over one another.
I think that kind of goes back to the psychology of it. Literally on the way here, I was talking to Jacksie, my mate from Ballyhaunis in the west of Ireland, who is, I think, 48, who I know only through FPL, met my other mate from Dublin, who is 27, who lives in Lusk in North Dublin, who I lived close to for a year. He's the one who introduced me to draft. They met in London this weekend to present him with a trophy for winning one of the leagues. And so the only reason that, like, if you trace it back, how these two people actually were talking is through FPL, and they're the two most opposite people, opposite sides of the country, and they were brought together by FPL. And I think, as you touched on there, Jacksie, the group chats, and as you said, you only talk to people because of the group chats. Literally, some of my friends are in my league. We could go on about the leagues for ages, but some of my mates, again, it's the only reason I keep in contact with them is through FPL and through the draft and through the group chats, because it's a lot more connected. And what we actually created, I suppose we kind of have to talk about it when we talk about community, is called the T12 Draft League. And we found with the draft leagues, they're very isolated. Best thing about normal FPL is that it's global. And I could walk in and to a pub and I could meet someone to play FPL. Oh, what's your rank? And we have something in common because we're all playing essentially in the same league. In the draft, we felt it's very connected, but in small batches. So we started the T12, which is like a ranked draft leagues. And it's based off the mediocre 64. Mediocre 64 is like a ranked normal FPL. And we did the same thing, 12 people per league, and you've qualifier rounds. So we're currently in the qualifier rounds, and the first 19 game weeks is all qualifiers, and where you finish based on your position is where you go into the second half. And what we did, we added everyone into a group chat. So there's like whatever 70 something in the group chat,
72, yeah,
from all over the world. That the only reason that we're in the same group chat is because we played the fantasy draft. And again, we're putting in trades, we're talking. I don't know half the lads. I just know like FPL, whoever. It's in my contacts. I don't know his name. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know who he is or what he is. But we have something in common. We have the draft. And I would feel confident. And we have met so many people through this very short journey so far on Twitter. Like, one fella literally said to us last week, like, you know, if you're over in Sydney, come stay at my house. I'll put you up. And that was like one of his first interactions. And it's weird. I'd be safe to say that I'd be confident meeting any of them because I know we have something in common. I know we can talk about FPL, and if the conversation ever goes dry, we can go back to FPL. So like literally within a couple of weeks, this is how good the community is, though. In a couple of weeks, a fella's like offering a bid to us the far side of the country. And I think that kind of sums up the FPL community.
Yeah, it would never a room full of people that love FPL. The conversation would never go dry. I don't think, would it? But yeah, no, I think you summed it up really well, and you sort of, there's lots of threads there that these conversations are kind of based on. Like, you know, like I reached out to you. We're now chatting. You're in Perth. I'm in Southeast England. Hopefully we're going to, stay in touch because we've got that, like you said, that common ground. So, and that's FPL all over, isn't it? So, yeah, that's amazing. And yeah, a brilliant explanation of the draft overall. But as I said at the very start of the question, yeah, if anybody's got any or wants any more info, yeah, the first few episodes, well, all the episodes are good, but I think there's a really good grounding for people to get started. So yeah, all the stuff will be in the show notes for that. A quick one about, so just hopping to the sort of the strategy of the head-to-head. I've noticed with the NFL, well, I'd like to get your opinion on the balance between skill and luck, which is obviously in FPL there's a huge amount of luck. There's and people have different opinions about what that percentage is. However, what I have found in the NFL head-to-head, which is my experience, and after this conversation, I'm definitely going to sign up to draft FPL. There's no doubt about that. What I have noticed about the head-to-head is that there seems to be maybe a bit more luck, just because you can lose a game and still have a great game week. So you can pick all the right players and get quite unlucky about that matchup that week, and then have a worse game week in terms of points and still win. So maybe it does evens itself out. So yeah, what's your because you obviously you play both games. So what's your opinion on that?
Yeah, the head-to-head, we do the same. And there's nothing worse than smashing a week, getting a 60, 70 pointer and coming up against the only person that could beat you. I think that is total luck. And I think you've seen it actually over the first like 6, 7, 8 game weeks. You can see the table and you can see the points scored. I'm sure it's the same. And I know a fella that had Haaland and Mbuemo and Mitoma and he was like second from bottom. And he had like 50 points more than the leader. So I think the matchups 100% is, it's all luck. Maybe it does even out. Maybe I think it's the way you look at it and you think, oh, I'm getting so unlucky. But yeah, I got a draw this week with like, I don't know, 25 points or something. And I suppose if I haven't looked, but if I went up against probably 9 out or 11 out of the other 12 people, I would have lost. So I think that part is just luck, the matchups, and you can just get unlucky because you got matched up with that person on that particular game week. But at the same time, and this has been my downfall one year, I actually threw the league away. The year Jacksie won it, actually, I was leading and I should have won it because I was looking too far ahead. And I was like in like 3-4 game weeks time, I was playing the person who was in second. And I saw like 2 players. I'll never forget them. It was Mason Mount and Edward. And 2 of them at the time were memes. They weren't even playing well. But I knew that they had 2 savage fixtures the week I was playing him. So I was just targeting that week. And I traded them. I traded Almiron, who was smashing it. And I traded Tony. I hate saying this out loud because it was the worst trade I've ever done. And it lost me the league because I was trying so hard to play the fixtures. I was looking way too far ahead in advance. So you can navigate them because all the fixtures are there and you know who's playing what team and what game week. So you can actually navigate them before you even get there. That sometimes can be overanalyzing. And if your players are going well, sometimes just hold them and just hope for the best. But I think in terms of the actual overall look versus skill, why do the same people hit top 10K every year? Why do the same people do well in the draft? I think there's a serious amount of skill. I know FPL General he asked a similar question before and there was varying answers. I would probably go 60%. No, I'd probably go 50-50. Maybe that's, I don't know. What do you think, Jacksie? What would you put on it?
I do think you can make your own look within the draft. Like you said, you look a few weeks ahead. But what I find, especially this year, is week to week, so much can change between suspensions, between injuries, between squad rotations. So if you're looking too far ahead, you mightn't be, you're not focusing on the near future. So that's why I just more so look at week to week. And I might have a look at the player I'm playing against just this game week. And then I will change my team to depending on fixtures and depending on what players he has, to try and counteract what maybe scores he'll get. So like, let's say if an example, let's say if he has Son in his team, I might try get Maddison in my team, so it might counteract the returns of those players. That's not like, nobody's going to give me Maddison or no one's going to trade Son for me, but that's just an example of what I might try and do. So yeah, skill definitely does come into it. And in terms of getting unlucky, majority of the time, let's say if you do really bad, if you have a bad game week, most of the other players will have a bad, like if you just get unlucky, if you pick the right players, you try to do the right thing, if you're on it every week and you have a bad game week, majority of the time, all the other players will have a bad game week and you will just get unlucky that it didn't fall on your head that week. But if you're doing the right things every week, I do think it will balance out. Yeah, if you're looking at fixtures, as we always say in our podcasts and how we recommend players, is we look at fixtures, we look at statistics, and we have the eye test as well. So we'll watch the games to see if there's any players like might be going under the radar under statistics, and that's what we base our decisions off, and that's why we have done so well in our drafts. Is we might put that little bit more effort into finding the players to pick, or the waiver player to pick in each week that gets you the win. Like Palmer getting me the win this week. Not everyone is going to pick Palmer, and that's what got me the win. So it is going. I think
Did Palmer get you the win this week, Jacksie? Did you pick up Palmer in the waivers? No way.
Hey, I had to get it out. That's me promoting. Promoting myself.
I think FPL Era had it up before a couple of weeks ago, and he said, "Is the right decision, wrong outcome." And I think that was a great quote for us, because we, as Jacksie said, we look at them three things. And I said it in last week's podcast that if I have them three things, or a player ticks all them boxes and I suggest them and they don't score, what more can I do? I can't predict what's going to happen. So as long as I can accept the process as which I'm picking them players, I'll accept the outcome. And he kind of put it at ease that if you implement them three things and it doesn't work out, well, you can't get mad at yourself. When you can kind of get a bit frustrated is if you just pick them randomly. And we're talking about the luck. You can have, and I've seen people that don't know anything about football, and you don't really need to know a crazy amount about football to actually do well, but they've had an outrageous week, and that can just fall for them. Doesn't mean that they're the best manager in the world. It's the people that make the consistent right choices. And he said that, sorry, I lost my train of thought there. Yeah, sorry. The only reason that you can be upset with yourself is that if you make a rash decision, or a decision that you had no process to it, there was no backing to it, that it was just a pure random decision, and it went against you, and it went against like a couple of things that were looking you straight in the eye, that they were getting rotated, that they were playing a hard team, all the basic stuff, and it goes the wrong way. Well, then you can get frustrated because it wasn't a right process. But if you go with your gut, sometimes they are the best things. That's the best decisions that you can make. That if you're looking at content, and we can be inundated with content each week, but if you're looking at content all the time and you really want to go with a particular player, but everyone's telling you have to do this, you have to do this, and everyone's putting this as their thumbnail, and this is the player to go for this week, and you don't really want to go with it, and there could be a couple of reasons, or it could be just total gut, and you go with the player that they suggest, and the player that you thought was going to do well scores. There's no worse feeling in the whole world than that, because then you get mad at someone else, but you at the end of the day were the one that decided to go with their decision. So when you go with your gut and it works out, again, it's the opposite. There's no better feeling. And I think nowadays, and I saw it last week, I think, until Salah returned, everyone was getting a bit nasty with content creators, being like, oh, they're suggesting this player and they're suggesting that player. And these are just people that I think comes down to jealousy. That, let's say, I don't know, FPL Raptor, FPL Fella, or FPL Andy, whoever it is, have a big following, and they're kind of jealous that it's working out for them, or they have a big platform, and they love when it goes wrong for them. And I think that's one thing that is a bit negative about the community. And everyone wants to get one up on the big content creators because they want to, convince themselves that they know more, or they're just downright jealous. So I think that's one thing that really has to change. That if you think that that player is not going to do well, that's fine. Go against him, but don't come at a content creator for suggesting something or putting out particular content. And I'm not talking about us now. We have actually had zero negative comments whatsoever so far, thank God. But I've seen it on the normal Twitter because there's a lot more people engaging, and I think it's one thing that needs to change. If you want to go for a player, that's your decision. If you want to follow a content creator, that's still your decision. So don't get mad at them for suggesting a player to you and you taking their advice.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, and something that for some reason I don't know. I would say 90% of the sort of Twitter community is positive and genuinely just makes me laugh a lot of the time with some of the kind of the humorous memes that go around, and a lot of it is a lot of people are very humble and but there's just a small minority, but whether it's the FPL community or other little subsections of the Twitter community or society in general, there's always jealousy and there's always people that don't want to take responsibility, isn't there? So yeah, but I think that would be nice to sort of clear up. But how you do that, I don't know. But it's
FPL memes are my favorite.
Yeah,
I actually was just laughing to myself the last day. I laughed, and my girlfriend was like, "What?" And I was like, "You won't get it." And she's like, "No, say it to me." And I said what it was, and it was just the most ridiculous thing. And she's like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I definitely didn't get that. Like,
you asked.
get a life."
Yeah.
Just before we go on to the final two questions, I just want to ask a sort of a slightly philosophical FPL question, and that's whether you think that your personality traits outside of FPL influence your FPL managerial style or vice versa. So, for instance, is your decision making in normal life, quite aggressive, or is it kind of conservative? And yeah, how does that merge in terms of your overall strategy?
Yeah, I might jump in here quickly, Knowlzy. You mightn't agree with what I say now, Knowlzy, because you know me more than anyone else. Yeah. But yeah, I suppose I do think I'm quite a calm person. I wouldn't be too aggressive. Maybe on the soccer pitch when I'm playing a game myself, but
or after a few pints.
I would think I'm quite calm. And yeah, I did say my background was in financial analytics as well, so I would bring that into it as well. So I would do my research before I'd make a decision. I don't think I'd be one to do a trade mid-game week or something like that. Although, like I remember last week, or it could have been 2 weeks ago, I said to Knowlzy, I said, I'd love to make an irrational decision here. I know it's going to be irrational, but I'd love to do it. And he said, no, don't. Wait till the end of the game week and then make the decision. So although I am calm and I do like to do my research on it and make an analytical decision, the urge to make a rash decision was there. But yeah, luckily Knowlzy was there to calm me down. What about yourself, Knowlzy?
Oh, what about me? I don't want to get into me. I am a highly competitive person, to a fault, I'd say, and I would have in the past wanted to go against. I wanted to always have a differential. I hated template, and I think that's why I love the draft so much, is because there was no template. So I was getting frustrated that the decisions that actually were right were the kind of steady and the right ones, and they weren't, like, as Jacksie said, irrational and a differential this week. They were I wouldn't say boring, they were the sensible decisions. And I didn't like that for the first maybe 3 or 4 years that I played it, like, seriously. I wouldn't. I've got in around 100k the first couple of years, and then I was like, okay, I want to actually look for a rank here. And I think I changed that and realized that you have to make these again. I didn't want to, but you have to make these sensible decisions. That it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that's kind of the difference between normal and fantasy. That normal fantasy is, it literally is a marathon. And that's why I think you can't get too up and down, because if you do a 5 minute pace and you're supposed to do it at 4.5, well, that doesn't mean your marathon's ruined. I think the draft is a bit more like a sprint in stages, like kind of Tour de France. It's a long thing, but it's little stages. They just have to win the stage. You have to win the game week. So I think I've calmed down in my decision making recently and went with a bit more sense to it, and definitely applied what we talked about earlier in terms of not getting too high and low. And maybe I was talking about myself earlier when I talked about the content creators, but like when I went with a content creator, happy, and when I went against them and maybe it didn't go my way, I don't blame them anymore. I kind of say I made the decision.
Yeah, I'd be like that myself. I find there's so much information on Twitter and there's so much out there, a lot of people giving like recommendations like ourselves, but I do find I like to make my own decisions. I like to go with my own gut. I like to come up with a player myself. If like you said, going with your gut, just doing the research, and you know that you made that decision. Nobody else made it. And yeah, like that's me in person. It's I want to do something for me. I don't want to do it. Maybe I might do it for somebody else, but deep down, you want to do it for yourself. And I suppose that side of me comes out in the draft, and it's probably why I love it so much.
That happened to me last year actually when I was wildcarding, and what happened was I looked at the wildcard on live FPL, looked at it and made it up, and was like, without looking at any other content, and decided it. And then I just went on Twitter, and the wildcards that were being made were fairly similar. One, maybe two players different to mine. And I said, okay, now I don't care about going with a template, because I came to that decision myself, realized that is the best decision, rather than, I think you don't feel like you've done it yourself when you've just copied someone else. And that's why I think both of us are similar, that when you make a decision yourself by researching it, again, that's the kind of gut and the head working together, and you get hopefully a green arrow at the end.
Or you win your weekly head-to-head.
That's it.
Good stuff. All right, so final two questions. The first one of the final two is one of my favorites, because these conversations, as I keep on saying, are really meant to be a celebration of the game we love, and there's no better way to do that, I don't think, than to take us back to your champagne moment, your favorite FPL moment. You mentioned earlier that certain FPL moments take you back to a specific time where you can literally remember everything in vivid detail. So yeah, whoever wants to go, that's no problem. Favorite FPL moment, over to you.
I'll go first. Mine's probably a bit more recent to yours. I'm not too sure which one yours was, but mine most memorable FPL moment came this year, actually. Well, the end of last season. So yeah, as I mentioned, I'm a Tottenham Hotspur fan, and it was the last game of the season. We were watching Tottenham, me and Knowlzy sitting down. I think it could have been 1 o'clock in the morning, maybe 12:30 in the morning over here, watching the last game of the season. Our Spurs were playing Brentford, and I actually had Brian Mbuemo on my team. And I didn't start him because I was playing against Spurs. I was like, can't start him last game of the season. I can't be starting a player against the team that I'm supporting. I want to support Spurs in their last game. And Brian Mbuemo. Yeah. So this was for me to win the league. I was after winning like 5 draft games in a row. I was in no man's land up until the last 5 games, and Knowlzy lost a few, and Rory Harford lost a few here and there, and nobody really saw me coming up the ranks in the last few games. And I was outside having a beer, and I was looking in the window, and I just seen Brian Mbuemo score a goal. That game, he scored 2 goals and got 1 assist, but I had him on my bench. I was like, so the emotions were going everywhere. Like,
I was celebrating at the time.
yeah, he was celebrating because he was going to win. So Brian Mbuemo, I had him on my bench. Spurs losing as well, and Brian Mbuemo doing this. I started DCL, and that game was on the next day, I believe. whatever happened, DCL doesn't play. Brian Mbomo comes on off my bench, and for me to win the draft. So, yeah, that definitely stands out. Probably because the roller coaster of emotions that was going on in 24 hours, because I had to wait till the next day to see if DCL was going to play. And yeah, and to wait to see if he would come on at all. So yeah, it was fairly nerve-wracking 24 hours, but definitely the moment that stands out in my memories
It's
so
mad
far.
how like a substitution would make such a difference. I remember a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I hope Gabriel doesn't come on. And as I finished the sentence, the screen panned to Gabriel and he was like taking off his bib. And I was just like, no, and got a good kick out of it. So a
Yeah.
substitution can even be like as exciting as a goal because it stops or makes someone come on. Sorry, like, go on.
Yeah, I was just going to say, for most of that game, I had my hands in my face because I couldn't watch. I was like, what's going on here? But yeah, that it was just a roller coaster. Just thinking back on it now, um, it's probably the most vivid memory I have of last
Anything.
season.
Of life, of life.
Yeah.
What I love about that is I can sort of see you just holding your face, just in absolute bit. Someone coming over that doesn't play FPL. Everything okay, mate? Right, and then you explain. You think,
Yeah.
Literally.
yeah,
It's the beauty of it.
Amazing.
My
Knowlzy,
own,
over to you.
sorry, yeah, my own memory. Unfortunately, see, this is where FPL comes into it as well. I'm a United fan, as you'll probably notice in the podcast. And I probably support FPL more than I support United at the minute because they're so bad. And this story is about Liverpool goal, and I hate that it is one of my favorite memories, but that's FPL. I was up in Dublin playing the draft, and I was so we had like an open room, and I was watching the game, Liverpool game, through the room. I was doing a bit of a workout. I was doing a few bicep curls there, looking over, and I was losing this game. I had I was like 5 points down, and it was like the 90th minute, and I had Alisson in goal, and I'm looking, and I was like, Alisson's coming up for the corner because Liverpool had to win that game to have a chance to stay in the Champions League, and we all know what happened next. Alisson bangs a header, and I run around celebrating a Liverpool goal, and I was the only one in the house. And the worst thing is, like, I was like, I have to ring one of the lads, like, I have to ring, and I was like, well, who do I tell? Like, I can't celebrate this with anyone. I'm also celebrating a Liverpool goal at the same time, so like, it's bittersweet. Liverpool get Champions League in the end. I win my draft game. Alisson, and this is where I suppose FPL comes into it. Alisson will always be a hero of mine. Liverpool keeper will go down in history as someone I'll never forget. Like, no matter what age I am, I'll always remember that flick on header, and it was a savage goal at the end of it.
Something to tell your grandkids about that, definitely.
Honestly. But again, there was this game back when I was young called FPL.
I was doing my bicep curls.
Your son is going to ask
looking at me.
He'd be like, Dad, why'd you call me Alisson?
yeah. Ali Nolan.
Love that.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. Well, just before we bring this awesome chat to a close, we've just got one last question, guys. So, what's the best piece of FPL advice you've ever received?
We discussed this on the way over about like decision making and stuff like that. And I think for me personally, and it applies to life as well. And I know we've got a philosophical throughout this, and I suppose that's the whole point of it. But it's zoom out. And we said that you can get so sucked into Twitter and Instagram or whatever you're consuming content on, and that red arrow can feel like it dictates your week. But if you zoom out and realize that the decision you make next week, although it was a bad decision this week or was a bad outcome, could be fantastic. I talked about it on last week's podcast that I picked Bowen one week and he didn't return, and the player I wanted to get did return. And all week I was effing and blind, and that feckin' fella suggested Bowen to me and blah blah blah. And Bowen then went on this hot streak, winning or scoring 4 or 5 games in a row. And I was like, hold on, that whole week that I was in the car giving out that meant nothing, and it's wasted energy and time given out. So if you zoom out, and I think this is kind of good for anyone, even in life, zoom out and look at something or a decision over a long period of time. I think we can get so down about something that happened that might be insignificant or might even be significant. And we might let that dictate our mood or our life, or say that this is the worst thing that ever happened. And we had this discussion last week. Myself and Jacksie went on holidays, and we were just talking in the car about someone, he got let go from work. And we're like, that could be the best thing that ever happened to him. But it's hard to tell that to someone at the time. It's very hard to comprehend that this could, for some reason, lead you down a path that you would never be there unless that particular thing happened. And I know we're talking about FPL, I'm talking about Bowen scoring a goal. But if you apply that to life, it will make, as I said throughout the whole podcast, them highs and lows a bit more mellow. And you won't get down about something that went wrong, whether it's your car breaking down or getting let go from a job or breaking up with your partner. That could be, in the long run, the defining moment that led you to do what you do. So zoom out, and that applies to FPL and to life. And I think if you actually zoom out and assess something at a later date and say, right, I'll park this and I'll assess it again, it will make your life a lot easier, I think.
Yeah. My favorite, not favorite quote or favorite piece of advice was that last week, Steve. I wouldn't really take much advice off people who have never really got much advice in terms of fantasy football. But it was, last week on our holiday. I don't know who scored on the other person's team, but I was like, oh no, my week is finished. It was the first game in the game week, the early kickoff. Never back the early kickoff, they always say. And it was the first one, and I was a bit down, or not even down, but I was like effing and blinding and giving out. And Steve was just like, it's the first game. There's 11 or there's 9 more games to be played. There's no point in you feeling down for a half an hour or whatever's left in this game, because there's 9 other games left to play and you could win the league. So you've just wasted a half an hour of your life on being down for no reason at all. So that stuck out to me, to just don't get too down on the decisions that are on the external things that happen to you. You can't control, once you've picked your team, you can't control what's going to happen. You can only control how you react to what's happened. So don't be too down on yourself. You'll have to wait it out and just control how you react to it.
I'm glad I'm such an inspiration for you, Jacksie. This is the first time he's ever told me that I'm his idol.
Well, I'm so glad that this conversation was a conduit for that lovely message. So that's amazing, isn't it?
You've just brought 2 best friends together. Thanks, Ben.
Even closer now. So, Jacksie, Knowlzy, it's been an absolute pleasure to share the microphone with you for the last hour or so. So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.